let's have some fun. So this is where it gets kind of interesting in the whole concept of why they call these things layers down here when you click on that, and as opposed to source name. Either way, it has no effect. So what we're going to do now is we're going to horse around with some of the cool features that are in here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with that dancers movie file. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on that dancers movie file. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a copy of that. So I'm going to go up to edit, and under edit I'm going to look for duplicate, or I could use the shortcut Command D. Now you're going to see there's two versions of this. Now I just made a copy of it, so the copy goes on top of the original version. And what I'm going to do now is I want to take the second copy now, and I want to change the name of it, even though it's the original one. Now here's where you can get away with changing the names. I can't go up here and change the name of any of these assets because I showed you that file path, other than the composition, which doesn't have a file path. And this is basically not considered this. It's just basically a rendition of that. So I can actually go here now, click on that, and hit my return key. And I'm just going to go and just click after the S and put dancers WFX, which means it has effects on it. So that way I know that the only difference between these two layers is one of the layers is going to have effects on it and the other isn't. So now that I've got that set up, I can start doing some cool things to that layer. Also, while I'm at it, I'm going to go and make some other changes as well, which is I'm going to go to that kaleidoscope layer, and I'm going to go edit duplicate, and I'm going to do that twice. So in essence, I'm going to make two copies of that. And you're going to see there's the initial copy, the second copy, I should say, the first copy, and the original. And again, what I'm going to do to help me kind of navigate how I'm going to do this is I'm basically going to click on the second copy of that kaleidoscope layer, and I'm going to call this K left, right? And notice I don't even have to worry about keeping all that gibberish that's on there. I'm going to call this K right, because these basically they're related to these, but they aren't these. They're just like instances of these, right? So now what I've done basically is I've taken those and made a copy of those, so I can go on and I can do some cool stuff. So first off, let's go back to that dancers layer, which dancers with effects. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take that dancers with effects layer, and we're going to start making some changes to that. And what I'm going to do now is I got that layer selected, and over here in my effects and presets, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to type in an effect that we're going to try to use. Now the effect is called a radial blur. So RADIAL and blur. And you can see there's two different versions of it. I'm just going to use the regular radial blur. And if I double click on that, it should add that effect onto that layer. And right now you're really not going to see that effect because the initial layer is over top of it. But if I turn the eyeball off on that, now you can see the effect, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start playing around with this effect. And what I'm going to do is two things. I'm basically going to take the center of that effect and I'm going to move it down to the bottom. I'm going to change the type from spin to zoom. And then I'm going to take the zoom control and I'm going to zoom it out to basically take those dancers and turn them into a giant blur. And now when I turn on that top layer, you can see how that blends quite nicely, right? So you can see there's the original dancers. And what I did was I used a copy of that to create an effect for this particular video. So I mean, that's how cool and how simple it can be. Now check this out. Again, just using some simple plugins, effects, and actually this next one isn't even really an effect. It's um, basically just playing around with properties. What's really cool here is you'll see that I've got those K left and K right layers, which again, they're basically just versions of that kaleidoscope layer. So I'm going to go to that K left layer and I'm going to click that little arrow to expand it. And you're going to see the word transform. Every layer has properties on it. And the basic transform properties are anchor point, position, scale, rotation, and opacity. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the position, and you'll see that we're in 2D, so X and Y. So basically, we got width and height, and we're going to take basically the any one of these properties, and you see if we start moving it around, see that first X property? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that, and I'm going to move that to the left of the screen, right? So now I'll close that up. I'll go to K right, and I'll go transform. I'll go to position, and I'll take that first X variable, and I'll drag it to the opposite side of the screen, right? So now, when I go to play it back, simple kind of cool effects that are very, very, easy to do. And just a little bit of playing around, you can do all kinds of really cool things. There's no shortage of different plugins that you can use in these effects and presets, and you can really start playing around in there to kind of, get different effects. Getting back to those K right and K left, I'm going to go to that opacity property. And because those are copies, what I want to do is I'm going to reduce those down to about 30%, right? Just drag them down to about 30%. And then I'm going to close that one up and go to K left, and I'm going to change that opacity as well to 30%, which, again, you can see how it kind of does that. Changes it a little bit, maybe, adds a little more interest and depth, so it's not just the same looking layer. And again, that's all done through these basic properties, these basic variables, which are there for you to play around with. Okay, we've made a lot of changes. We're going to go File, Save As, and Save As, and we're going to call this version 6. Okay, we'll hit Save. All right, I'm going to stop this recording, and I'm going to restart the recording to show you some other cool stuff.